Welcome all. I'm very honored actually to see us all in this virtual roundtable. It's of course a weird year and I would rather have done an official roundtable on the trade show, but hey, that's not the case. I'm especially honored because there's been only a few months of working together in big tempo on realization of ScootHub, which of course is the result of a forward vision that all three of you have. It's needed actually in the industry to overcome those difficult times. In talking about time, let's hand over to Vimal Rai, who is going to be our moderator for the roundtable. So Vimal, take it away.
Hello, gentlemen. Thank you, Martijn, for setting the scene for us. I'm really excited to be able to welcome all three of you, Campbell, Spencer, and Chris, as guests on our inaugural virtual roundtable discussion. My name is Vimal, and as you may know me, I head sales and marketing for AirFi for APAC and the Middle East. Over the years, I've actually been on all sides of the table. I've worked in Singapore Airlines for 12 years, as you know, and then I've worked with a number of other airlines around the world, mostly supplying into them various types of solutions, focusing on in-flight and operations. I like to say I've done most things except fix and fly the plane. Now, just in case there are people watching this who don't know Scoot, SATS, and Krisshop, may I please request each one of you to just give us a quick introduction to yourself and to your business, of course. Let's start with you, Campbell.
Thanks, Vimal. So Scoot is the low-cost subsidiary airline of the Singapore Airlines Group. We, pre-COVID, had a fleet of 50 aircraft, approximately equally split between narrow-body and wide-body, flying to 65 destinations as far afield as Australia in the east of us, and Berlin in the west, north to northern China, and of course Australasia in the south. About 2,500 people, about $2 billion revenue.
All right, thank you very much. Really interesting. Spencer, over to you.
Hi, I'm Spencer from SATS, and SATS is Asia's leading provider of food solutions and gateway services. Our food solutions include airline catering as well as central kitchens for food service chains and institutions. And of course, on the gateway side, it encompasses air freight handling, passenger services, aircraft interior and exterior cleaning, etc. We're present in over 65 locations and 14 countries across Asia Pacific, UK, and the Middle East.
Wow, that's really spread out from when I remember back in the day, Spencer. Chris, over to you.
Thanks, Vimal. Hi, my name is Chris, also known as the shopkeeper. I'm the CEO of Krisshop Private Limited. So Krisshop Private Limited is an independent entity, majority owned by Singapore Airlines, and our other shareholders are SATS and 360, a known in-flight concessionaire that is based in Miami. So we start off with a vision of being the premium omni-channel retailer through service excellence and innovation. Our goal is to actually reimagine the whole airline travel retail business model, moving away from the traditional in-flight sales catalog and sales card to a business model where e-commerce is at the center of our business.
Well, thank you very much for your introductions, gentlemen. Just a quick little bit about AirFi. For those of you watching who may not be aware, we deliver solutions that are used by crew and passengers alike, and we enable, therefore, airlines to generate revenues in flight. These ideas, of course, have come fantastically well together in the form of ScootHub, Campbell. For those of you viewing this, again, who don't know what ScootHub is, who haven't been watching the news, please click on the link below to watch a video from Channel News Asia, which showcases ScootHub. So once again, gentlemen, it's so good to have you here to share your ideas on the industry, on the recovery that we all hope is going to happen sooner rather than later, and about ancillary revenue in general. Let's get started. So this is for all of you. My first question, what's been your top 3 challenges in general?
I think maybe from an airline perspective, being the most critically affected, clearly the first 3 priorities were survival. And so liquidity management, fleet, cost management, all of those things consumed the first few months. Then it was about how do we rebuild for what we believe the future world might look like, bearing in mind that none of us really quite know. So AirFi investment, amongst others, is part of that because it does address what we perceive to be both a short and medium-term customer need, as well as a medium to long-term business benefit for the airline. So it's been a busy 9 months. It's been an unprecedented 9 months, but thankfully we can start to see some light on the horizon.
Thank you, Campbell. Spencer, how about you?
Yeah, well, SATS has a number of lines of business, but I think what's most relevant here perhaps are the buy on board service that we offer through our airline partners. And certainly these months have been very, very challenging, as Campbell has explained. For us, the top challenges were one, there were just, well, the passenger loads disappeared, essentially. And for the flights, the few flights that remained, what was a major challenge was the fact that there were no ancillary sales, as buy on board was suspended. Although we see that that's changing soon. And another challenge was that COVID hit so quickly that I think we weren't able to deplete inventory fast enough, and so that was another challenge in the initial part of the crisis.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think before we knew it, everything was shut down, and we've never faced these kinds of this scale of challenge before in practically in any business, right? Chris, how about you? What are some of your challenges? I mean, in-flight retail is something that's close to my heart, and I can imagine that when there's, somebody said something today which I read. He said, "No travel, no retail." But I think you guys have completely turned that on its head, haven't you?
Yeah, I guess my first challenge is like what Scoot or what Campbell has said, is about survival. How do we continue to pay the bill when pre-COVID, a big chunk of my revenue is tied to associated with aviation? And that is my first challenge. How do I pay the bill? My second challenge is that how do I look after our staff who continues have to work under lockdown and COVID environment? And that I think we have achieved that, and we continue to operate as normal during this period. And the last part is how can we then turn around and serve our customers during lockdown, as well as our brand partners who need a new channel of sales. I think that itself, we have also managed to achieve that. In fact, we have benefited in a way from this whole pivoting to e-commerce.
Mm. So knowing what you know today, 10 months later, hindsight's always 2020. Is there something that you would have told yourself last year, for example, if looking now at what's happened, is there something that you would have told yourself last year or you wish you had done differently, for example?
Plenty of things we would have done differently had we had the foresight, not least sell any aviation-related shares. But I think we're at this point now, we're better to look forward and focus on the future rather than what might have been done. This is just such an unprecedented and dramatic event that there's nothing we really could have done to prepare for this.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. I don't think we could have really prepared for this. Business continuity planning doesn't take into account a complete shutdown. Not usually, at least. It might from now on. So let's get back to you, Chris, for Krisshop. What do you think is the X factor behind Krisshop today? What appeals to your audience of shoppers?
Actually, our X factor is the association with the Singapore Airlines Group. That itself gives us the frame, the customer base, the assets that the airline have. That itself is an X factor. But more importantly, that itself also set a very high expectation from customers that we need to provide excellent service even in the digitalized environment. I guess that itself is what we call X factor, that the expectation from our customers because of that association with the Singapore Airlines.
It's a strong brand. I completely agree with you. And how about you, Spencer?
I would say that SATS is very, very open to new ideas. And certainly you need that in these times. In the best of times, we're paranoid about staying relevant to our airline partners in terms of how to drive growth together. And to do that, we've really needed to innovate in all dimensions. And one important way is the actual physical product, the food, which we're looking at new recipes, new flavor profiles. You have to have new and relevant offerings. But on the other side, there's also the fulfillment and delivery, which has to get more efficient. And this is increasingly digitally driven. So these are the aspects that we've really tried to pull together to differentiate ourselves. And one other important differentiation is that we SATS, we understand Asia and Asian culinary preferences and trends. And these can be quite different from other parts of the world.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. The fact that the proof of the pudding, as they say, is in the eating, and eating can't be digital, but everything before the eating and after the eating can be digital. Campbell, what do you think, the LCC business, lots of things can be said about it, but what do you think is the main differentiator that Scoot brings to the game? Because the number of destinations is expanding, the competition is intense, and it's presumably going to get even worse in the next couple of years. What is your sustainable differentiator from your perspective for Scoot?
Well, bear in mind that our competitor set is not just low-cost airlines. It is full-service airlines, it is other modes of transport, and it's also people staying at home. So really, our differentiator is one, it's low unit cost, which allows us to sell at a cheap price. But relative to our peers, it clearly has to come down to customer experience. And that is driven through people. It's driven through investment in technology on the ground and in the air. And this underpins why we've launched ScootHub, because that is part of the differentiation that we aim to offer. So clearly, as a low-cost carrier, we want to be different than full service because of low ticket price, but we don't want to be cheap and nasty. Ultimately, it's a fun, friendly, trustworthy airline.
Yeah. So could you share with us what you might be planning for the next 12 to 18 months, Campbell? Sort of looking forward in the short to medium term.
Well, really, the next 12 to 18 months is highly contingent on progress on the virus and their government response to that, vaccine deployment. So really, we don't really know what the future specifically looks like. We do plan a strong recovery. We think that's going to happen in the first half or middle part of 2021. But we are extremely confident in the future for a few reasons. One, we think that our business model, which is principally leisure focused, is likely to recover faster. We're not reliant on corporate travel budgets. And there's clearly a pent-up demand from consumers to get back to some form of leisure travel. Two, we operate within the region, and I think people's perception of risk correlates with the distance, and also visiting friends and family tend to be intra-region. Third, our business is largely point-to-point traffic. We don't rely on aggregating a lot of traffic at a hub, so we don't need many borders to be open in order to resume flights, whereas big hub carriers are a bit more dependent on many countries opening. Fourth, we have low operating costs, lower than most of our competitors, certainly our non-LCC competitors. And finally, we have the low ticket price, and in a constrained environment where people are a bit worried about jobs or have depleted their savings, that's clearly an attraction. So I think the low cost part of the business will recover well, and I think the Asian part will recover particularly well, given that countries like China, Australia, New Zealand, Thailand, Vietnam, they've all handled the virus quite well, and so plausibly with a vaccine, they might be inclined to open relatively fast.
Yeah, no, that's. I do wish you all the best, because this is something that we all wish for. I mean, we all want to fly again, right? Chris, how about yourself for Krisshop for the next, short to medium term, 12 to 18 months? What do you think's on the horizon for Krisshop?
I think one thing has changed. I think the consumer behavior has pivoted entirely to e-commerce. And in fact, we started the whole process of reimagining what in-flight retail will be. And one of our key objectives is actually how can we bring the whole e-commerce experience into the aircraft cabin itself. So I think for the next 12 to 18 months, we are putting in plans, progress towards this goal of bringing the whole e-commerce experience. And what does e-commerce experience mean? It means the ability to have access to a wide portfolio of products and services. It means the ability to have that convenience of fulfillment anytime you want. So I guess that is something that we see that in the next 12 to 18 months, we are able to put that in place and bring the whole e-commerce experience to 30,000 feet in the air.
In terms of skill sets and resources within the company, do you think this is something you can fairly quickly scale up with, or is there going to be some lag to when the recovery happens and so on? Spencer, how about yourself? Because it's a pretty resource intensive business, isn't it? Catering.
It can be indeed. So I mean, we're cautiously optimistic, and optimistic for the reasons that Campbell outlined for strong recovery. And so definitely scalability is something that we're going to be concerned with as in terms of the new deployment. So we're already seeing a closer integration between the different parts of SATS. on this, what I can call a digital journey in terms of offering this new experience on Scoot in collaboration with AirFi Scoot and Krisshop. And this brings together our teams from travel retail, from food solution, from technology. And so really the skill set is increasing the internal collaboration so that we can bring to bear the best of SATS in terms of helping grow this new offering. Now, what's important here is also analytics, because as Chris described, this is bringing e-commerce into the air. And from a food and beverage perspective, we're switching from printed to digital menus, and that's really important in what needs to be a low-touch environment in a post-COVID world. Now, when you go to digital menus, this allows SATS to work with Scoot to refresh the menu offerings much more often, because you're not weighed down by all this paper, literally. And so this then gives us the opportunity to feature the latest F&B trends, have more seasonal campaigns that are relevant and attractive to Scoot passengers. And to do this, we will need to work with Scoot on better analytics and better understanding of Scoot's customers, so that we can increase the penetration, as you pointed out, which can sometimes be a challenge.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Clearly, a lot of thought has gone into planning for what passengers are going to need and want in the future, and how do we enable that to happen. So let me just dial that back one step, and looking at inside the cabin and taking Spencer's comments about digitalization and sometimes the very practical things like the menus and so on. Campbell, could you share with us your thinking around the new initiatives that culminated in ScootHub? What prompted the rethink? And perhaps more importantly, how did you approach it strategically?
There were drivers both COVID and non-COVID related. The non-COVID related was, of course, to improve the customer experience. That not having in-flight seat back entertainment as a low-cost airline, as almost all of us don't, we wanted to make sure that customers had access to the functions that they still desire. And so we were looking for something that would provide them a digital menu, that would provide them destination content and perhaps the ability to book that content prior to arrival. We wanted the capability to offer in-flight entertainment, whether it be TVs or movies, should we so choose. And of course, we wanted to improve the in-flight duty-free proposition beyond just what could be physically stored in a cart or what people chose to browse through on a magazine. There's obviously a driver from the environment too. All of those things are heavy. They burn fuel, they cost us money, they create emissions. And so all of those things were sort of the non-COVID drivers. When COVID came along, for regulatory and public health reasons, we couldn't continue doing the high-touch customer service, including F&B sales and duty-free sales on board to the same extent. And so this a pre-COVID approach morphed into a post-COVID solution to allow us to resume in-flight F&B, in-flight duty-free, and do so in a way that was satisfying to regulators, to staff, as well as to customers. And it's not a small deal. For a low-cost airline, ancillary revenues, of which these elements are some, is around 25% of total revenue. So not insignificant from a business driver either.
That's fantastic forward thinking. I mean, it's been said, right, that COVID's accelerated digitalization by up to 10 years, and it's not surprising to see you take the lead in that. How difficult was it for both SATS and Scoot to really consider the investment decisions in terms of the cost, essentially, given the current climate? I mean, and I suppose I don't need to specify what the current climate is, but it is a very tough cash flow situation. So how difficult was it? Bring us through your decision-making process in deciding that, yes, this is one of the key areas that we want to invest in.
Well, I've articulated the customer experience benefits that we saw here. The fact that there's a significant revenue driver from ancillary revenue, and then more recently the customer experience and regulatory, from a safety COVID perspective, that led to this investment. The investment in the grand scheme of things for an airline is not significant. And so we felt it was one that was well worth making for the ability to resume, as well as the ability to continue selling products that clearly are of customer interest. Our concerns were really, is there truly the business benefit? What is the actual cost? What is the regulatory requirement of installing such equipment on an aircraft? What are the logistics of maintaining that equipment? And so once we could tick all of those boxes, it was a fairly simple and fast process.
Okay, great. And Chris, Krisshop typically was associated simply with Inflight and with Singapore Airlines. To expand that offering into something that's clearly, and I've obviously been following the developments over the last couple of years quite closely, but to expand that offering to make it into a sort of a marketplace, and to now have it on Scoot as well, and to really look beyond just the cabin. I mean, what sort of prompted that rethink, and how difficult was it to decide that, yes, that's how we want to expand this. We want to make it more lifestyle. We want to be more we want to try and capture more of the market.
I think it's quite straightforward when you look at the traditional airline retail model. It's about the sales card, the catalog that doesn't change for 3 months, and the number of items that we can carry in the sales cards is sometimes no more than 250 items. Then when you compare that to e-commerce pre-COVID, and you look at COVID now, where e-commerce is almost in everybody's daily lifestyle now. So it doesn't make sense for us to continue with the model where there's a high chance of disappointing our customers because there's a mismatch of supply and demand. So going e-commerce and then bringing that experience entirely into the cabin is no-brainer. It's a must, I would say. Yeah. And on top of that, I think to differentiate ourselves versus the platforms out there, we're not just selling products. We're actually a curator of content. We are representing brand partners, because who are we serving? We're serving a bunch of people that travel around the world. They can buy anything, anytime, anywhere in the world. So our challenge is, how do you then curate the right content on behalf of our brand partners and bring it to our customer base? I think that is the biggest challenge. And to do it through e-commerce platform is a wonderful way, because there's no restriction on inventory. There's no restriction on content.
Yeah, kudos to you. I think you're the first person I've ever heard say it's no longer in-flight retail, it's now curation of content. Relevant content to the right person at the right place and at the right time. That's fantastic.
Can I maybe just augment that a little bit too? As an airline, we obviously serve many places with many different customers. The passenger profile on a flight between Singapore and Sydney is very different to one between Singapore and Chennai or Singapore and Guangzhou. And the people's shopping interests are clearly very different. But you take that back and try and manage the logistics of having different products aboard different flights, with all managing the carts that are being taken on and off, managing the inventory and supply. It just becomes an impossible issue. So by employing technology, we can firstly ensure that we can tailor the contents of the carts to the appropriate flight, but secondly, not limit ourselves to what is physically stocked on board the cart. So it becomes just a totally different proposition than traditional in-flight retail was previously the case.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think the word you were looking for was that it was a nightmare from an operational perspective. And actually, sorry, Spencer. Before I go on, would you like to add on?
Thanks, Campbell. The key word here is complexity and the trade-offs, because if you want better penetration, you have to have more tailored offerings. Of course, ideally, it's tailored to the individual, and Chris certainly talked about that. But when you look at the profiles of different types of travelers and different routes, whether it's A to B or B to A matters, and what time of day matters. The flip side of that, though, if you were to address that very well, you get a lot of complexity in terms of your fulfillment, your replenishment. To deal with that, we've made a lot of investments in terms of the digital transformation at SATS, and including the use of video analytics, etc., for better replenishment. These are things that we are working on that we think will enable us to scale the solution up and deal with the complexity at the same time. I mean, it's a big challenge, and certainly for the next 12 to 18 months, that's something that we're definitely going to be very focused on.
Yeah, fabulous segue to actually my next question to all of you, which is very much operationally driven, and it's not intuitively so. So allow me to finish the question, which is this. So, because there's so much complexity and because it's so different and so difficult to actually customize something within an aluminium tube, and as you alluded to, Spencer, what you carry there and what you carry back, and and it's not just merchandise, it's also F&B, because we've all got different tastes, and so on and so forth, right? We can all imagine the complexity. But here's the thing, and the question is as follows: how do you decide? And this is going to be really interesting for everyone else watching this. How does Scoot, how does SATS, and how does Krisshop decide which partners you work with and which suppliers you work with? Because at the end of the day, if you have sort of an end-to-end vision that simplifies the complexity, and that has to, the supplier or the partner has to take on some of that work on your behalf to make sure that they're doing their core expertise, which is not your core expertise. So, putting all of that together, what goes into your decision-making process when you when you choose a partner to work with?
I think the operative word there is partner. In customer experience, customers remember the negatives much more than they remember the positives. And so the first priority is don't screw it up. If you commit to something, make sure you can deliver it. And so it is not just a supplier-vendor relationship. It is, do we have a shared interest in making sure the customer is made whole? Secondly, it is how can we improve the customer experience and also the bottom line? So what is the investment in capabilities, whether it be digital capabilities or analytics or product range, and back-end support? And so those are critical, because if you don't have the partnership, if you don't have the customer in mind, if you don't take shared responsibility, the ball will be dropped somewhere, and ultimately the customer is the one that suffers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, very well said, Campbell. Thank you. Spencer?
Well, I think what the words that come to mind beyond partnership would be trust. And I think when you work with someone, especially offering something new under a lot of time pressure, not only do you have to believe that you're working with partners that know what they're doing, as you said, they have to have the core competency in the technology, but you also have to trust an ability to deliver. This trust does get built up over time if you've worked with them before, if you have existing collaborations, and that's often the case here. But at the same time, this was, I think, an instance when we were working with one another in very new ways. So even though it's old relationships, they're very new collaborations at the same time.
Yeah. And Chris, I'm sure every brand now wants to get on Krisshop. So what are the gateways that they're going to have to pass through to qualify to get onto Krisshop?
My first instinct is alignment of vision. Let me give you an example. So in August this year, we launched what we call express delivery, the ability for customers to order on Krisshop.com 60 minutes before their flight departure at Changi Airport, and for us to then deliver the merchandise to the airline, the aircraft itself, and for the crew to then deliver the merchandise to the seat, to the customers. So if you imagine how complex this is, 60 minutes for us to do that fulfillment. And in order for us to do that, we need to then bring the problem statement to our partners such as SATS, as well as Scoot as an airline, to say that, look, there is this opportunity for us to optimize retail opportunities. But in order to do that, we have to overcome this. And that alignment of the vision allows us to then overcome all the challenges that you can place along the road, such as regulatory, security, lack of time, space, and whatever you can imagine. So alignment of vision is, to me, the key in this partnership. Yeah.
Right. So let's just rewind and review that. You said 60 minutes. So technically, I could be sitting in the lounge. Well, not if I'm flying Scoot, but I could be sitting at the airport and I could be ordering 60 minutes before my flight, and I could get the product delivered to me at the gate or in flight.
Delivered by SATS.
Delivered by SATS. That's fantastic. That's amazing. In all my years in the industry, I don't think I know of any other airline or for that matter, retail program that has, I mean, you're like the Amazon, right, of the skies then.
I would think that we're beyond Amazon because we are cloud shopping.
Yeah. Cloud shopping, that's a good one. Yeah, fantastic. So if we look at this overall project, you know, that's kind of the centerpiece of our discussion here, ScootHub. What were, if you don't mind sharing, what were some of your top challenges? What kept you up at night? Or maybe nothing kept you up at night, which is fine because you know, AirFi was good. But what were your top challenges? And was there any point in the journey that you felt, you know, maybe we've bitten off a little more than we can chew? Maybe we should push it forward. So what would you be willing to share some of your top concerns or top challenges? Spencer?
Well, I think it would be the top challenge was the amount of time we had to do this, made more pressing by the need for regulatory approval, as this was the first deployment of its kind in Singapore, or indeed in Asia Pacific for that matter. And so, you know, with Campbell's leadership, the team had less than 6 months from start to launch, and it really would not have been possible if not for the commitment and the can-do attitude from all stakeholders.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, that's a brilliant shout out to the team internally as well. Fantastic work. I saw some of that happening and it was all hands on deck all the time. Chris, how about yourself?
I'm actually not thinking about challenges. I'm thinking about what's next. You know, I'm thinking that we will get there with a digital catalog. Now, the next thing I'm thinking of, like, how can I optimize the use of Wi-Fi connectivity? So today I have express delivery. Tomorrow, what I'm looking at is that if someone flying from Sydney to Singapore to London, transit via Singapore, can I get them to order when they're on Sydney to Singapore leg, and I then deliver to the Singapore to London leg? So I'm thinking of like that's next. That's the next thing that we can do, the full usage of in-flight Wi-Fi connectivity.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, I'm waiting to see that happen. I'll be the first one to pre-order when that happens, I think.
Vimal, I just have to jump in here and remind you that as a low-cost airline, Scoot does offer in-flight Wi-Fi connectivity on our wide-body aircraft. Yes. And we do sell lounge access. That lounge actually is operated by SATS, so it's all very much in the family.
Now, you know something, Campbell? I apologize. I have used the lounge when I was traveling on Scoot, and it was a SATS lounge. It was fantastic, but it was just tongue in cheek. I hope you didn't mind. So, how about you, Campbell? Top considerations or challenges during this process?
Quite honestly, the only concern I had was regulatory, for the reasons that Spencer said. This was a first of its kind in the region. Regulators obviously require oversight on whatever is being put on board aircraft for good reason. And so that was probably the only thing that was outside our control that I had any concern over. Everything else was incredibly smooth. And as I say, the logic for doing this, whether it be commercial or customer experience or health and safety, just made compelling sense.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, great. So to end off this wonderful discussion, here's a slightly personal question to each one of you. When we are all able to freely choose to travel again, where will you be traveling to for a vacation, and why? Why that destination? Chris, let's go with you first.
Actually, I don't care where I'm flying to. I just want to be in an aircraft that actually get pushed back. That's all I want.
So not one of those flights to nowhere, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me. I just want to get into the aircraft, push back, get the message that please put on your seatbelt, we are ready to take off. Just that feeling of hearing that is good enough for me.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Yeah, I can sympathize with that. Spencer, how about yourself?
I'll be torn. I mean, on the one hand, I probably want to go home, hometown, Toronto. Back in Canada, I haven't loved to see my friends. It's been a long time, as you can imagine, with the whole COVID situation. But beyond that, actually, the place for vacation, actually, I'd love to go to would be Portugal.
Oh, nice. I was just there last year, the end of the year. That was my last vacation.
Ah, well.
Fantastic. How about yourself?
I'm totally with Chris on this one. I really don't care where, as long as it's somewhere. I've enjoyed 9 months being in Singapore without break, but somewhere else would be nice for a change.
Yeah, yeah. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for sharing. Campbell, Spencer, Chris, was a privilege to speak with you, get your thoughts and advice on the way forward. I'm sure all the viewers will appreciate your candor, sharing what went into the process, what you thought about, what kept you up at night, and the fact that all three of you have this combined, united vision for the customer's experience to be not just different, and this is a phrase I like to use quite a bit in some of my writing, which is, we all talk about the new normal, and sure, there will be a new normal, but we need to aim to make it the new extraordinary, right? And the new extraordinary is something that is really going to stand out in the minds of people, because that's what experience is. And then the commercials will follow, right? Thank you once again. I'm so grateful to all three of you for your time. Fantastic to have you on the show, and see you on my next Scoot flight, when I'll be dining on some food from SATS and pre-ordering something from Krisshop.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.